This video is going to tell you about how it all went down, the details and the facts.
A woman who had an affair with Chris Watts told our partners at the Denver Post that she hardly knew anything about Shanann and that she had only recently started a relationship with Chris. Well, there's now evidence to suggest that she knew about Shanann almost a year before the murders.
Nichol later talked to police.
And then one day he told me that he had 2 kids.
Hi, Bill.
I was like, that's pretty cool. And started telling me about his kids.
That sounded like a sarcastic comment.
No, I thought it was kind of cute. I was like, oh, he's a dad. It was like right around Father's Day, too.
She learned he was married even though she says he didn't wear a wedding ring. The other woman claims she met Watts in June. She says she thought Watts was at the end of his divorce proceedings.
I didn't know his significant other's name for a while. He said.
Do you know her name at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you okay saying her name?
It's Shanann.
This video is going to be taking a look at the critical days leading up to the murders of pregnant Shanann Watts and her daughters Bella and Celeste Watts on August 13th, 2018. We will be looking at the week before the murders, paying particular attention to the days when Chris Watts spent time with his mistress on Wednesday, August 8th and Saturday, August 11th, and some very curious facts about both Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger on Friday, August 10th, and Sunday, August 12th, which of course was the eve of the murders, and what those days mean in regards to determining the role Nichol Kessinger may have played in the ultimate outcome of this horrific tragedy. And we will also be taking a look, exclusive to this video, at Shanann Watts' final Facebook post. These seemingly benign posts were removed from Shanann Watts' Facebook account and attempted to be scrubbed from the internet shortly after this tragedy happened. When you read the posts and consider the whole picture, including Chris Watts' relationship with his wife and his mistress, and particularly the known events that occurred in the week leading up to this tragedy, you might have some ideas why those posts were removed, and I'd like to know what yours are.
The decision was made about 4 days ago.
The decision to take the death penalty off the table in exchange for Christopher Watts' guilty plea to all 9 counts he was originally charged with, including first-degree murder of a child under 12, tampering with a deceased body, and unlawful termination of a pregnancy.
The Watts family murders. This is undoubtedly one of the most horrific crime stories of our era. Over 5 years has passed, and with each passing year, with each passing day, nothing about this case becomes more clear. Looking back on the investigation of this case and the prosecution of Chris Watts, you have to ask yourself, was anything ever meant to be clear? Was justice ever meant to be achieved? Chris Watts took the lives of his wife, who was 15 weeks pregnant, his 4-year-old daughter, Bella Watts, his 3-year-old daughter, Cece Watts.
So I'm here with my little munchkins.
And the unborn baby that was going to be his very first son, baby Nichol Watts.
Oh, good girl. Oh, I love it. Good job. High five, baby.
I want to stay with her. Don't kick her away.
The murder of a pregnant woman, a 3-year-old and 4-year-old baby, and the way that the bodies were disposed of, it's absolutely egregious. There really aren't words that can describe how horrific this crime was. This is the kind of crime that causes us to put faith in the justice system and the prosecutor's office. Because after all, what more horrific crime could be committed than this? This is the kind of crime where if you give a crap about justice, you are going to make sure that anybody involved in committing this crime is discovered, charged, and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Bella, will you tell everyone how old you're going to be?
We?
Unless, of course, you are the Weld County District Attorney, Michael J. Rourke.
Stop asking about it. She didn't have anything to do with it. She wasn't there that morning. She voluntarily cooperated with law enforcement. She provided us all the information. I'm not going to tell you where she's at. Stop. Leave me alone.
That was District Attorney Rourke commenting on Nichol Kessinger in March of 2023. Let's see what DA Rourke had to say about Chris Watts' mistress after his sentencing in November of 2018.
Can you give us a better idea of her role in the investigation, how forthcoming she was and how she helped?
She originally came forward and spoke to investigators on her own volition. Prior to the time, unfortunately, that she came in and spoke with investigators, she had deleted all of the information off of her phone that had any connection between her and Chris Watts. That hampered the investigation. That hampered our ability to get that electronic digital connection between the two. She was interviewed on multiple occasions. I believe that for the most part she was forthcoming.
It's clear that there are some major discrepancies between what District Attorney Rourke said in 2018 after the sentencing and then what he said most recently on his wife's podcast in March of 2023. In his most recent recollection, he says that she came forth voluntarily and she was forthcoming with the information that she gave to investigators. Yet in 2018, after Chris Watts' sentencing, he said that she hampered the investigation by not giving investigators all of the information. And then he says that he believes that she was forthcoming for the most part. Very different statements, Rourke. We know the truth about Nichol Kessinger, and we know which of his statements is the accurate one, the 2018 statement or the 2023 statement. And the accurate statement is the 2018 statement, and it's an understatement because we know Nichol Kessinger obstructed justice by destroying evidence. We know this hampered the investigation, and we know that she was absolutely, completely not at all forthcoming with investigators. And we, the public, are left with far more questions than answers. And that's where we pick up here. This video seeks to answer the question, was there an ultimatum? Did Chris Watts' mistress, Nichol Kessinger, give him an ultimatum? It's me or your family. According to Chris Watts, in his jailhouse interview from February 2019, that Saturday, August 11th, the day of his date with Nichol Kessinger at the Lazy Dog restaurant, was pivotal. Listen to what he says about his feelings about that evening he spent out with Nichol Kessinger, and if things could have ultimately have gone differently.
Even it felt like, like looking back at everything, like just like reading the scripture more and more now, I can see God gave me opportunities to get out. Like even my friend Jeremy Lindstrom, he even invited me because it was his daughter that came and watched the kids on that Saturday night. And he was like, hey, you said we're going to a Rocky game. You want to go to me with the Bronco game and watch the Arizona Cardinals? Like in my mind, it was like, go. Just say, hey, I can't find a babysitter.
Nikki.
Yeah. And maybe that would have been like a light switch in my head goes off, light switch in her head goes off, maybe it just goes different direction. That was kind of like my last opportunity to kind of get out this game.
Listening to that excerpt of his interview from prison begs the question, why did he feel that was his last opportunity to get out? Let's take a closer look at that week before the tragedy, paying particular attention to the days when Chris Watts and his mistress, Nichol Kessinger, spent time together.
I really wanted them to fix it. I would have just left the situation.
So tell me why Shanann calling a realtor and him mentioning that they were going to be divorced. Why do you think it's important?
Because So after that, he was like, she's the one who called the realtor. And I remember I was like, damn, that was fast. Because I knew he told me, like, we were going to put the house up, but they said, he was like, we didn't know how much to offer for it, and we were kind of trying to find somebody. And it, like, so for the first few weeks that I hung out with him, he kind of, like, dragged his feet on, hey, this is happening. And then after North Carolina, he's like, yeah, she wants to put the house up. She's the one that called the realtor. And I was, like, kind of taken back, not necessarily at the speed of it, given how long he said that they'd been separating, but the fact that she did it like the day after he supposedly sat down and had a conversation with her about, hey, do we fix this or do we not fix this relationship?
If you are all familiar with the Watts case, you know, like me, that there's a snowball's chance in hell that Chris Watts and Shanann Watts had a sit-down conversation while they were together in North Carolina when Chris Watts came out to visit for the last week of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste's solo trip across the country to North Carolina for a 6-week visit in the summer of 2018, just before Chris Watts, perhaps with the help of another, annihilated his family. Shanann Watts' best friend, Christina Meacham, learned what was really going on between Shanann and Chris in North Carolina.
She sent me a picture. It's like, this is how we are right now. They were in the same room, but communicating through text. They were not talking with each other.
So, do you remember how many days she was back in Colorado before leaving? Do you know that?
Because I don't remember when they got home.
Right.
I don't. Because I don't remember when they got home.
Right.
I don't.
Ms. Kessinger states that she doesn't remember when the Watts family altogether arrived home from North Carolina back to Frederick, Colorado. This is an absolute lie, and I'm going to show you how we know this in just a moment. This is a lie that must somehow be important to Ms. Kessinger, as she repeats this lie across several different interviews. Let's listen to what she had to say in the August 16th interview, the one with Kevin Kobach, also in person, her first in-person interview with him, where her dad is present. This excerpt from the interview occurs immediately after she denies that she knew that Shanann Watts was pregnant until the Tuesday after the murders, the day after the murders, when she was reading the newspaper, remember? And we know that is a lie too. Take a listen.
All right, we can move past that. The week that he comes back from North Carolina, you don't remember, somewhere in the first couple of weeks of August.
Yeah, I think it was the second week, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Keep in mind, this interview takes place on August 16th. The day the Watts family returned home from North Carolina was the evening of the 7th. So their first full day home back in Frederick, Colorado was August 8th, just 8 days before this interview.
So we'll just use August as a time frame. Is that fair? Because you know he left in July and he comes back in August. How many times do you think you see him?
I saw him a few times. I saw him this past Saturday. I saw him the Wednesday before that. And he wanted to see me more. I was the one who wanted my space. I was like, nope, your kids are home. Go hang out with your kids. And even on Wednesday, I cut it short. Like, he came and hang out with me for a few hours. And then I was like, go chill with your kids.
So Wednesday was the day after the family returned home from North Carolina. And that was a very eventful day for Nichol Kessinger and Chris Watts. I'm sure it was a day that she remembers. There are a lot of important things happened. And that's why we know that she knows exactly when they got home from North Carolina. She says, I also saw him this past Saturday, which was just 4 days ago from this interview. That was the evening when they went on their date to the Lazy Dog restaurant. Saturday the 11th, just a day and a half before the Watts family was annihilated in the early morning hours of Monday, August 13th, Lazy Dog date day. Over the years, many people have speculated that planning happened. Planning towards the murder of pregnant Shanann, Bella, and Celeste at the Lazy Dog the evening of Saturday, August 11th, between Nichol Kessinger and Chris Watts, and some people even believe there were others involved, like leave Jim alone, perhaps. Now, according to Nichol Kessinger, all they did on that date was talk about macros, and she also admits that there was a lot of talk about Chris Watts moving into his new apartment, an event that was surely significant in the mind of Nichol Kessinger, as Chris moving out of his house with his family and into an apartment on his own would signify the official end of his marriage to Shanann and the official beginning of his new life together with his mistress. What was said that evening at the Lazy Dog is a critical part of Nichol Kessinger's ultimatum, and we will get to the details on what that was after we review what happened on the Wednesday when the couple was together. A day Nichol Kessinger certainly would not have forgotten so quickly.
And even on Wednesday, I cut it short. Like, he came and hang out with me for a few hours, and then I was like, go chill with your kids.
So, in the time when Chris Watts returned home from North Carolina with his family the evening of August 7th, through the early morning of August 13th, when Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico were murdered, Nichol saw Chris twice, she says, once on Wednesday and once on Saturday. Now, it's important to put their meeting on Wednesday in context. It's critical that we understand this. That Wednesday, August 8th, when Nichol Kessinger apparently cut it short, Chris Watts was home in Colorado with his family for the first time ever apparently in the history of their dating, according to them, on August 8th. He's there in Colorado, Nichol is there in Colorado, and for the first time his wife and children are also home. That dynamic and that change in the environment that Chris and Nichol were living their fantasy relationship in must have caused a lot of pressure for each of them and for their relationship in general. It is important to note that Chris Watts was home with his family in Colorado, again, for the first time during the entire duration of his short 6-week relationship with Nichol Kessinger, for just under a week before his family was annihilated. It's also important to note that Shanann was only home on that Wednesday and Thursday, the 8th and the 9th, before she left for a Thrive Lavelle trip in Arizona at 4:30 a.m. early Friday morning. So that means during the relationship of Chris and Nichol, that 6-week-long relationship, Bella and Celeste were only there in Colorado with them, so to speak, just under a week, and Shanann was only in town for 2 days. Knowing that makes statements that Nichol Kessinger said during her interviews with law enforcement so very curious. For example, this statement here.
Because, like, he could pretty much call me whenever he wanted. Like, I was the one that would tell him, like, hey, when your kids are awake, you need to spend time with your kids. Like, do that. And then after they go to bed, like, if you want to talk to me, you can talk to me. But it was never, like, this super, super restricted thing. Like, sometimes, like, right after work, if I was, like, still talking to him, I'd get kind of bummed out. And I tell him, just like, oh, it's frustrating sometimes, like, having to, like, wait. But at the same time, I was never like, this is horrible, or, it was always like, I understood why.
So now that we know that the girls were only in town for 6 days during Chris and Nikki's entire relationship, and Shanann was only in town for 2 days, and Chris went to Nichol Kessinger's apartment right after work on Wednesday the 8th, that means there were only 2 days, that Thursday and Friday, when Nichol Kessinger would have had to have waited for Chris to call her after work to get all frustrated. But wait a minute. Chris and Nichol both took that Friday off of work. Listen carefully to Nichol Kessinger's response to interviewer Kevin Kobach when he asks about what Chris Watts did on Sunday. She's being forgetful as usual, but pay careful attention to what she says.
Do you know what he did Sunday during the day?
I don't even know what I did on Sunday during the day. I am so tired. Let me just think about this. Daniel came over Friday. I hung out with him Saturday. And then Sunday.
When did Jim come in?
Monday.
Huh.
Jim got here Monday. What did I do on Sunday? I am like drawing a blank. I'm really tired. I don't know. Can I get back to you on that?
It is absolutely no surprise that she cannot remember what she did on Sunday. After all, Sunday was the evening going into the early morning when the family annihilation happened. It's also the evening when the 111-minute phone call happened that neither Chris or Nichol Kessinger will reveal any details about. Of course, she doesn't ever remember anything about Sunday. But did you catch that? She said, Danielle came over on Friday. I hung out with him on Saturday. Danielle Hadel, her friend, was in town Friday evening and spent the night at her apartment Friday night. Maybe that's why she had taken Friday off.
So the 10th, oh, you went to the Rockies game.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't see him that day. I was with my friends, and I stayed with me that night.
So now let's listen to Troy McCoy talking about meeting Chris Watts on the afternoon of Friday, August 11th. This is when Chris Watts gave Troy McCoy his Fire Stick to try to jailbreak it. Do you remember? Chris Watts was trying to save expenses of sports channels, and he was going to try to watch his sports through the Amazon Fire Stick, and that was the purpose of the meeting.
Okay, so let's cover some timeline stuff here.
Yes, sir.
So let's start with on Sunday. So Sunday would be the 12th.
Yes.
Did you talk to Chris at all on the 12th?
I didn't speak to him over the weekend. I seen him on Friday.
So that was the last time you saw him before the work week.
Yes.
Okay.
I seen him on Friday, and he'd taken off Friday to take Shanann to the airport for Phoenix.
Okay.
And then he told me he wanted me to look at his Fire Stick that he bought. I said, okay. So
like TV Fire Stick?
Yeah,
okay.
Amazon Fire Stick.
Sure.
So before the workday ended on Friday, he's told me that he'd meet me at the Safeway parking lot there in Fort Lupton. And he showed up in their Lexus, and Bella and Cece were in the back seat. So he jumped out, gave me the Fire Stick, and right after he gave me the Fire Stick, that's whenever Cody called. Cody Roberts, the operator of the Circuit 319, and said that he thought there was a leak in the bypass line.
And that's on 319, you said?
Yes, the Circuit 319.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because that bypass line is now locked and tagged out because we done that Monday morning.
Okay. Okay, so Bella
and Cece. Or
Cece.
Yeah.
We're in the back seat.
Yes, sir.
And was Shanann?
No, sir.
Was she in the front?
Taken her to the airport.
You already took her there?
Yes.
Do you remember what time this was?
I look back to my text messages I gave you because he told me he was sitting by the 5.0. There was an orange Mustang sitting in the parking lot.
Okay.
I think it was one of the ladies that, it looked just like the one I used to have. Okay. Because I had it red when I was telling you about that earlier.
Yeah.
So, and he's a huge Ford guy because he was a master mechanic.
Yeah, I remember he said something about that.
Sorry.
No problem.
Chris Watts. Okay, thanks. Forward your link. You just sent it there. Okay, right here. It's at 3:05.
Okay.
Just whenever you send me the text message, here part.
Friday, August 10th, off of work, because Chris Watts needed to take Shanann to the airport, as Troy McCoy reported. We know that that is not the case. He did not take Shanann to the airport. Nicole Atkinson picked Shanann up from her home around 4:30 a.m. That is a well-known and documented fact. And the girls were going to daycare, or they had been going to daycare before they left for North Carolina. So it makes sense that maybe Chris wouldn't want to take them that day, but he could have. So we wonder, why did Chris Watts take off that day? And again, we have no idea why Nichol Kessinger did not go to work that day. They both report that they did not see one another that day. Do you believe that's true? Leave a comment below letting us know what you think. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but many people have created theories about exactly what happened that created this tragedy that had to do with Chris Watts and Troy McCoy exchanging that Fire Stick. You see, their coworker, Cody Roberts, reported that there was a leak at Survey 319 while Chris and Troy were meeting in that parking lot that Troy was talking about. The timing is kind of ironic. Now, many people bring up this Fire Stick as being something suspicious. People who are proponents of the so-called explosion theory, some of them say that perhaps the Fire Stick was used as a detonation device. I personally do not believe that is the case because I don't believe in any kind of explosion theory around this case. And Chris Watts talks about using the Fire Stick to watch sporting events with both Shanann and Nichol Kessinger. It makes sense that he might want to use that way of watching the sporting events that he really enjoyed. We know that that is true because we do know that Chris Watts and Shanann Watts were headed towards their second bankruptcy, and Chris was aware the finances were pretty tight and those sporting event channels on cable are wicked expensive.
So it was really only one day. So that one day of Nichol Kessinger having to wait a little while for Chris Watts to call her after work because he was with his children must have made a real impression on her. But remember, Nichol Kessinger cannot recall when Shanann and Chris got back from North Carolina, even though it was just 8 days prior to this August 16th interview. I wonder why she won't admit to knowing when they returned home.
On that ever important Wednesday, August 8th, the first day the family was back in Colorado, he goes to work on that day, but right after work, we know from his geotab information that he drives right over to Nichol Kessinger's apartment immediately after work. I always wonder how Chris Watts got away with this, so to speak. We know that he was a creature of habit, as was Shanann. Their family had a very strict routine, and Chris was generally home between 3:30 and 4. So I wonder how Chris got away with going to Nichol Kessinger's house for hours after work on that very first day they were home from North Carolina without Shanann giving him a hard time. So on that Wednesday, August 8th, the first full day the Watts family was home, he stays there until 6 p.m., which just gives him enough time to leave her apartment, go pick up Shanann, and arrive at the ultrasound appointment to find out the gender of the baby that was scheduled for 7:30 p.m. that evening. Now, Shanann Watts was over the moon because Chris agreed to attend that ultrasound appointment with her. We know that August 8th was a big day for Shanann Watts. It also turned out to be a critical day for the relationship of Nichol Kessinger and Chris Watts. Here's a brief summary of the many important events that happened on that day. I do want to note that I detailed all of the events of this very important day in the history of this tragedy in the original Ultimatum video, which is linked in the description below. All of Shanann's text messages between herself and her friends during the time when she was concerned about Chris's behavior in their relationship are documented in the investigative discovery. So if Shanann was suspicious about what he was doing after work that day, she would certainly have discussed it with one of her friends, and it wouldn't have appeared in the discovery. Listen to her best friend, Christina Meacham, talking about the routine nature of Shanann Watts' personality and the Watts family's life.
I mean, like when Nikki went by the house, things didn't make sense to me at all because it just, she said routine. She said routine, like, she's OCD. She has everything in order. She literally has a plan for everything. She's not a person to derive from those plans, right? This is what she's going to do. This is what's going to happen. The kids have times they go to take naps. They, things go a certain way. She has a routine. Even what she wears, even the flip-flops that she wears, it's a routine for her.
I wonder what Chris told Shanann about what he was doing after work on that day. We know from the investigative discovery that just 2 minutes after arriving at Nichol Kessinger's apartment, he modified Shanann Watts' contact information in his phone. I have to surmise that he was changing the contact name, so it didn't say Shanann Watts or whatever he called her in his contact list, but rather something else. Although we know that Nichol Kessinger knew that Shanann Watts was pregnant with Chris's child, I doubt that he wanted to tell his mistress that he had to leave at a certain time because he had to go check out to attend an ultrasound appointment with his wife to find out the sex of their baby-to-be. Yeah, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that's what he did. We know that he stays there for several hours at Nichol Kessinger's apartment and leaves right around 6 o'clock. He stays just up until the time
when he would need to leave to be able to go get Shanann and make it to the ultrasound appointment at 7:30 p.m. on time. So he's there for about 3 hours. Also on that day, while Chris is at Nichol Kessinger's apartment, Nichol Kessinger gives Chris Watts a key to her apartment.
One of the confessions that Chris Watts makes in his Letters from Christopher, the compilation book by Sherilyn Cadle, is that when Nichol Kessinger gave him a key to her apartment, he felt like it made their relationship official, that she was very serious about him and their future together.
Shortly after Chris Watts leaves Miss Kessinger's apartment that evening, Miss Kessinger Googles for the first time something as explicit as this statement, literally verbatim, quote, marrying your mistress. We certainly know what's on Nichol Kessinger's mind when Chris Watts leaves her apartment on that day.
We also know on that day that Chris Watts deletes his Facebook account. We know this because Dave Baumhover asked him about this in the jailhouse interview. And also, Shanann asked Chris about this through text, and he and his father Ronnie also discuss the deletion of his Facebook account through text messages. He tells Dave Baumhover that the reason he deleted his Facebook account is because he just learned that Nikki told her friends about him, and he didn't want them to look him up and see that his wife was pregnant. Seems everything was moving very quickly for Chris and Nikki after the family returned back to Colorado from North Carolina. She gives him a key to her apartment, and it makes sense to me that it was during that time while Chris and Nikki were at her apartment after work that day that they discussed that Nichol had told her friends about Chris. And we do know that there is some truth to that Nichol Kessinger was telling her friends about Chris Watts. We know from the discovery and from Nichol Kessinger's interviews that she had a text conversation with her very best friend, Charlotte Nelson, telling him all about this man that she just met, how wonderful he was, and a number of details and explicit facts regarding their physical and intimate relationship. And do you know what day she, for the first time, told her best friend, Charlotte Nelson, about her new beau, her new love interest, the person for whom she's Googling marrying your mistress and looking for wedding dresses online for hours and hours? That day, the first time she told her best friend, Charlotte Nelson, about Chris Watts was Sunday, August 12th. That's right. The day before, just hours before, Chris Watts' family was murdered. Is that coincidental timing or what? Or did Nichol Kessinger know that she should start telling her friends to tell her best friend for the first time about her new beau because she knew that in a very short time from then, he was going to be free and clear to be with her and only her, free of his family, of his pregnant wife, and of his 2 children, ready to start a fresh new life with Nichol Kessinger, putting her in the seat of first fiddle. So let's shift back to Nichol Kessinger's recollection of the days before the murders, the weeks before the murders, the time before the murders, since the Watts family returned home from North Carolina to Frederick, Colorado, and when Chris Watts, in her mind, was moving closer to holding those keys to her apartment permanently in his back pocket or the console of his truck or wherever he puts his keys, and also her very selective memory and her emphasis on the Watts family selling that house, 2825 Saratoga Trail.
And then it was like, we're filing for divorce, we're selling the house. And this was like all as soon as they were coming back from North Carolina, like boom, 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 boom.
Would you recall when he gets back from North Carolina?
No, I don't even know how long he was out there. I know it was like less than 2 weeks and more than 1.
Okay.
I don't remember.
I really wanted them to fix it. I would have just like left the situation. I knew he told me like we were going to put the house up, but they said he was like, we didn't know how much to offer for it, and we were kind of trying to find somebody. And it like, so for the first few weeks that I hung out with him, he kind of like dragged his feet on, hey, this is happening. And then after North Carolina, he's like, yeah, she wants to put the house up. She's the one that called the realtor. And I was like
kind of taken back, not necessarily at the speed of it, given how long he said that they've been separating, but the fact that she did it like the day after he supposedly sat down and had a conversation with her about, hey, do we fix this or do we not fix this relationship?
So do you remember how many days she was back in Colorado before leaving? Do you know that?
Because I don't remember when they got home.
Right.
Can't remember, but it's okay, Miss Kessinger, because we here at Watts the Obsession have done the math for you. After the Watts family got home from North Carolina, Shanann Watts was home a total of 2 days before she was murdered.
They get home. He had told you in North Carolina that they agreed to end their finalize their relationship.
Yeah.
They get home and she immediately wants to sell the house.
Yes. And then, so, I mean, I started thinking, okay, well, I know in Colorado houses sell very fast here. So I was like, what's your plan? You know, and I was like, because you might want to be prepared. And I remember that's when the whole concept came up of, you probably need to start looking for a new place pretty quick. And that was when he was kind of overwhelmed with it. And I told him, I was like, look, like I just moved a few months ago. And I was like, to find a place that was comfortable for me, it was like, it took like a lot of research. And that's when I offered to help. I was like, I'll help you. And he seemed pretty gung-ho about it for like the first week. And he seemed very grateful. And I was putting in work on it. And I was like calling him and kind of letting him know about places. And there really wasn't that many options in Brighton. I found one. I actually texted it to myself before I texted it to him because I still have that in my phone too. Because I found it and it was great, but it was like right at the beginning of my search. And I was like, I don't want to inundate him.
So you said a week. Do you think you worked on that for a week?
No, I honestly only probably spent like a few hours over a few days and just trying to like line it up.
Just trying to think about how many days she had been back while you were working on that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh.
So you said, did you actually work on it for a week straight?
No. Okay. It was just like a couple days after work. I would just like spend a couple hours if I had time, like at the end of my day, or if I didn't go to the gym, and just sit down. And I mean, I can give you a date on one that I worked on because I texted that one to myself.
Okay, now pay very careful attention to the next thing that she is about to say here.
I mean, I can give you a date on one that I worked on because I texted that one to myself. This one, I loved this one. When is this? Saturday, August 11th.
That's the night you guys went out?
Yeah.
To the lazy dog?
Yes.
Or the two lazy dogs?
Did you catch that? Oh, I can give you a date here. I text the listing to myself, and it's the date is August 11th. The silence is deafening. Silence like we have not yet heard from Chris Watts' mistress before after she says, oh, it was August 11th. All of a sudden, she's speechless because law enforcement is not supposed to know what was really being discussed at dinner that evening. They're just supposed to believe that the entire time, Kessinger and Watts were talking about Chris Watts' diet and macros.
I can give you a date on one that I worked on because I texted that one to myself. This one, I loved this one. When is this? Saturday, August 11th.
That's the night you guys went out?
Yeah.
To the lazy dog?
Yes.
Or the two lazy dogs?
Okay, so this little sound excerpt that I'm playing here is 35 minutes into the 2-hour and 20-minute final interview between Nichol Kessinger and Kevin Kobach. Now, up until this point, all that she has told Kevin Kobach about what they had discussed at the Lazy Dog that Saturday night, just about a day and a half before the murders, was Chris Watts' diet, his macros, dialing them in when she is asked about their date at the Lazy Dog restaurant on Saturday, August 11th.
Saturday, during your dinner, what kind of conversation did you guys have?
I don't even.
The question is, Saturday during your dinner, what kind of conversation did you have? And let's just look at her response, her reaction again. Again, we have a moment of silence, very rare for this mistress.
During your dinner, what kind of conversation did you guys have?
I don't even remember. Oh. I don't even remember. Oh.
She clearly does not want to answer that question. She's not.
You guys catch that? Let me just go back again because she just like, I think it's so clear how badly she does not want to answer this question.
What kind of conversation did you guys have?
I don't even.
The question is, Saturday during your dinner, what kind of conversation did you have? And let's just look at her response, her reaction again. Again, we have a moment of silence, very rare for this mistress.
During your dinner, what kind of conversation did you guys have?
I don't even remember. Oh. I don't even remember. Oh.
She clearly does not want to answer that question. She's not willing to answer the question. What was the conversation when you guys were out at the Lazy Dog restaurant? She has selective memory about so many things throughout the hours upon hours of all of her 5 interviews. You know, right here, we're talking about not knowing when the family got home from North Carolina back to Colorado, even though it was just a week before this interview, right? And then to say that she doesn't know what they talked about at the Lazy Dog restaurant or act like she doesn't remember. It was 4 days before this interview. Of course she remembers. Of course she remembers these things because she remembers the details about so many insignificant things. So we have to ask the question, why is Nichol Kessinger, Chris Watts' mistress, lying to law enforcement? Now, it's one thing to have selective memory about just random things, but here she's being directly questioned about recent events pertaining to the murders of a 15-week-old pregnant woman and her 2 baby girls. Oh, by the way, the person who killed them, perhaps with the help of another, is her boyfriend. And this woman gets off without any hard questions, with no charges, although from what we already know about what she did, she should have been charged. She has no penalties, no consequences or repercussions. Law enforcement completely let her off the hook. And we have to ask,
Saturday during your dinner, what kind of conversation did you guys have?
I don't even remember. Oh, so he's been trying to like eat a little healthier than he normally does. And he's always like been in the working out since I knew him, and he like tries to eat clean, but he was trying to like step it up a little bit. And nothing like the people who do like the competitions and the shows that are all super restrictive. And it's nothing like that. It's just like day-to-day general maintenance.
Wait. What did she just say?
The people who do like the competitions and the shows that are all super restrictive.
Yeah, the people who do the competitions and the shows that are all super restrictive and stuff, you know, like the professional bodybuilders. Like, what is she talking about? It's crap like this, ramblings like this, complete nonsensical, irrelevant. What the hell are you talking about, girl? Stuff like this that she spews for the whole 9 hours of interviews that she does over those 5 interviews that lets us know she has no interest in helping this investigation and no interest in telling the truth. Why is that?
There's nothing like that. It's just like day-to-day general maintenance. But it's how I eat, and it's pretty healthy. And he's been losing a lot of weight. He lost, I want to say like 13 pounds in the time that we were hanging out. And honestly, when you start eating a little bit cleaner and you start working out a little bit harder, the first couple months, especially for a man, because they lose weight faster, it's not something that's like that drastic to me, but it did stand out that it was like a little much. And so I was like, whoa, like maybe.
Seriously, guys, I am sorry that you are listening to this in my video right now, but I'm going to speed it up here. We're going to listen to it on double time, so she could do it really fast. But I think it's important to understand how long she was talking about absolutely nothing, not answering the question that was asked. Well, because she's lying. And I mean, who would really think that this answer is genuine? And how Kevin Kobach just patiently waits for her to finish with her diatribe and then says, okay, so that was, you know, the bulk of your conversation, all this shit that you're telling me now, the macronutrients. She's like, yeah. It's important. What does she not want to talk about that was discussed at dinner when they were at the Lazy Dog, or what happened that evening that she doesn't want law enforcement to know about?
So let me look at them. So he had been working on his
my FitnessPal app and like programming like all stuff he eats. And I just started going through them, and I was like trying to figure out like where his ratios were. And we actually spent a lot of time doing that because he'd asked me to do it for him. Because I just was at the point where I was like, if his weight loss slows down in a few weeks, he'll be fine. And if it doesn't, then his macros are a little off. It's not like that big of a deal. Like in the workout community, this is like a very normal thing. But
Did you have any other outside concerns, like potential drug use, alcohol use, any of that stuff that led you to go, oh, he's lost an extreme amount of weight in such a short period of time?
No, and I wouldn't call it extreme. It was just like, it was a lot. But I mean, when I first started working out, I dropped like 12 pounds in 2 weeks when I first started like hitting it hard with the diet. So the fact that he lost like that much weight, it wasn't, like I said, it was not a surprising amount. I just didn't want it to be like a sustained amount. But no, I didn't think anything weird of it just because of like how interknitted I am with the like workout community. And I know like this is possible, but it just, the thing that concerned me about it, I guess, and it wasn't even concerned, but the thing that like kind of red lighted me like, hey, this might be carrying on, is the fact that his macros were like pretty dialed in. Like I wrote them and he like didn't stay exactly on them, but his calorie intake was about where it needed to be. My experience anyways, for like what he was trying to achieve. And so I don't know, he didn't seem to have a problem with it. He liked where he was at with all of that.
So that was your main conversation Saturday?
That was like a big chunk while we were there, is like us actually going through, because I was like going through each item, like, why are your ratios off?
Do you know where his kids or wife were that night?
Good old Kessinger using a technique she is comfortable with when she does not want to answer a question, when she wants to obfuscate, confuse, and redirect whoever she's speaking with. And that is to just ramble on about bullshit that has no consequence or meaning for anything that they should be talking about right now. One of the primary signs that somebody is telling a lie in their narrative story, or if they're being asked questions, is that what they say does not match the question asked. And this happens through all of the 5 interviews, almost 9 hours of interviews with Nichol Kessinger as it relates to this tragedy. So the comfortable conversation that Nichol Kessinger just defaulted to when Kevin Kobach asked her about, hey, what did you guys talk about at the Lazy Dog, is, the fitness app and the workouts and the dialing it in and the macros and the diet and how she helped Chris Watts. And if that sounds a little familiar to you and you hadn't heard those words verbatim before, it might be because another time when Nichol Kessinger does not want to tell law enforcement what she was up to or what was said, she defaulted to talking about helping Chris Watts out with his fitness app.
I think this is a really interesting point, that she goes to these like similar topics when she wants to avoid, answering a certain question. I think this is super interesting, and this is a technique that compulsive liars certainly do use.
Good with working out, but he needs to dial it in with the macros and the diet. And that was when she ended up at his house on the morning of the 4th of July, after he left her apartment because Shanann was freaking out because she couldn't get a hold of him and she was pissed. She just shows up on his doorstep. This is just a few days after they started dating.
I just sat on the floor, and it was on the 4th of July. It was the morning of the 4th, and I was helping him to set up my FitnessPal app and like track his food, his calories and stuff, because he does pretty good with the working out and stuff. And he asked me, he's like, can you help me just like get this dialed in? It's like, yeah, I can do that. So that he invited me up to the house, and I was already kind of hesitant to do it because I was like, there are other people that live here, and I just felt like it was an invasion of space.
It takes one special kind of personality to talk about such meaningless, self-involved crap and show no concern for the victims under these circumstances, and all the while lying her way through this nearly 4-hour interview. Lies, lies, lies. Now, although Nichol Kessinger had certainly mentioned Chris Watts getting an apartment, moving out of the house and getting an apartment of his own, and her helping him with those efforts before this, what I consider to be a slip, when she says, oh, well, the day I texted to myself, it was August 11th. Crickets, like we've never heard from her before, because I don't think he was supposed to know. I don't think that law enforcement was supposed to know about the heat that Nichol Kessinger was putting on Chris in that week, in those days, in those hours leading up to the family annihilation. The high pressure that she was applying for him to make a move and make it now. And most of all, the ultimatum that she laid down before him just days and hours before Shanann, 15 weeks pregnant, Bella, and Celeste were murdered. Now, this is just one piece of the puzzle that lets us know that there was, in fact, an ultimatum delivered from Nichol Kessinger to Chris Watts. But I want you to just take note here and put a bookmark in it that this is, in fact, a piece of that puzzle we're going to refer back to. All right, go get yourself a glass of water, a glass of wine, or a cup of coffee, but get ready to pay attention. The following excerpts are going to cover a pivotal, compelling 20-minute span of Nichol Kessinger's interview from August 16th, 2018, the one where her dad was present. Again, it's just going to be excerpts, but I need you to listen carefully. Oh, and we're going to start out when Nichol Kessinger is talking all about those macros when she is asked about their date at the Lazy Dog restaurant on Saturday, August 11th.
Saturday, during your dinner, what kind of conversation did you guys have?
So just like Nichol Kessinger did not want to tell law enforcement that she had a tantrum on the 4th of July and showed up at Chris Watts' house and all of the rest, she didn't want to tell law enforcement what she and Chris talked about at the Lazy Dog because it had very much to do with Chris Watts' relationship with his wife, again, just like it did on the morning of the 4th of July when Shanann wanted Chris to answer the phone immediately and was questioning him because he wasn't. And he responded to that, and that upset his mistress. Something was going on with Shanann and Chris that weekend of the Lazy Dog date. And on August 11th, just before the murders, they had Nichol feeling very uncomfortable about Chris and Shanann's relationship. She was freaking out, throwing a tantrum, needed things to be her way, making demands, telling Chris how it was going to be, pushing him around, berating and belittling Shanann, and caring about no one other than herself.
Do you know where his kids or wife were that night?
On Saturday?
Yeah, his kid. Well, you know his kids are with the babysitter. Do you know where his wife is?
She's in Arizona.
Okay. How do you know that?
Because he told me.
Okay. Do you know what she's doing there?
I think she's on a business trip. He didn't even tell me right away. He actually told me, I think, like on Saturday or something. It might have been like Friday or something. I honestly don't remember. I just remember I was like really surprised where he's like, hey, like, I'm going to try to get a babysitter if you want to hang out or something like that. And I was like, why do you need a babysitter? Like, your wife's home. He's like, no, she's out of town. I was like, oh.
Okay. Is there much conversation regarding?
And check out the body language from Miss Kessinger.
I just asked him what time she was coming home on Sunday, and he just said really late.
Okay.
And that was it. I mean, there's nothing really to talk about with that.
And she ends by saying, when he's asked if they talked about Shanann, yeah, well, there's nothing really to talk about with that. Wow. Remember, again, Shanann Watts' remains were just recovered hours before this interview. And for people who wonder why the world can't stand Nichol Kessinger, here is a shining, well, really, a dimming example.
Not really. I just asked him what time she was coming home on Sunday, and he just said really late.
Okay.
And that was it. I mean, there's nothing really to talk about with that.
Okay. So your conversation's mainly health related.
Mm-hmm.
You guys return to your house, and then he goes home, and then you talk to him for a few hours on Sunday.
All right. This is Kevin Kobach's first attempt at taking a crack at trying to discover what that 111-minute phone conversation was about that happened literally just a few mere hours, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours before Chris Watts' family was murdered. Now, something you might find interesting, how many times did Kevin Kobach ask her about what was discussed during that 111-minute phone conversation on Sunday, just hours before the murders? You know how many times he asked her about that phone call? I can tell you it was at least 8 times. I counted 8 times, 8 significant times where he asked her directly or tried to follow up and really try to get an answer from her. And did she give him any meaningful information or truth about the 111-minute phone call. Any of those 8 at least times, he asked her directly about what was up that phone call. Like, it was long, weird timing. It was the longest phone call in her 3 months of phone records that they obtained per the discovery by far. The second longest phone call on her phone records was only 52 minutes, not 111 minutes. It was significantly longer, significantly closer to the time of the murders of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste than any other phone call. And you know what else? You may have heard me talk about this before in one of my phone data videos. On her phone bill, the 111-minute phone conversation is right next to the 6:16 a.m. phone ping that happened right outside the Watts house. That's right. No other activity happened on Nichol Kessinger's phone between that 111-minute phone conversation just hours before the murders and her 6:16 a.m. ping right in front of the Watts house that would have happened just hours, minutes, moments after the murders.
So I think that's another important point I just want to highlight on her. As far as her phone activity goes, these two events are next to one another chronologically. Nothing happened between them as far as her phone activity. The end of the 111-minute phone conversation, and there's a whole lot around that that's interesting. We talked about that during the last live stream. We talk about it again and again and again. It's all really important stuff. And then the 6:16 a.m. phone ping. From the end of the 111-minute phone conversation to when her phone pinged in Frederick, Colorado at 6:16 a.m., there was no other activity on her phone. That's important. Oh, man, like how was she not interrogated and investigated heavily?
And then you talked to him for a few hours on Sunday.
Did I? Are you asking me or are you telling me?
I'm asking you.
Oh, I was like, I don't even know. Someday, honestly, so wait a minute. That was Saturday. We're talking about Saturday. We're not talking about Sunday right now.
This is a dimming example of one of the travesties of the dynamic of this interview. That Nichol Kessinger is allowed to just lead him all over the place in whichever direction she wants to go. He asked about the 111-minute phone conversation on Sunday. She's just like, wait a minute. We're on Saturday. Well, there's nothing more to talk about on Saturday. Nothing else happened unless she wants to mention her Google search for Shanann Watts, Chris Watts, Ronnie Watts, and 2825 Saratoga Trail that happened 2 minutes after Chris Watts left her apartment at 10:02 p.m. after their dinner at the Lazy Dog that Saturday evening. Aside from that, nothing else happened, apparently. Since most of you have already listened to many of the Nichol Kessinger interviews, and specifically the one from August 16th, the one where her dad is present, I'm just going to tell you that as Kevin Kobach asked Nichol Kessinger about the 111-minute phone conversation, she successfully detours him for about 10 minutes, going off about Nutgate, talking about Cece Watts' apparent tree nut allergy and the fight that Shanann and Cindy Watts got into as a result while they were in North Carolina on July 9th. You guys probably know a whole lot about that whole situation. And if you don't, I have plenty of videos created about Nutgate on my channel. She just talks in circles and really doesn't get anywhere. So finally, Kevin Kobach cuts her off about that and tries again to redirect her. So after successfully ending the tangent Nichol Kessinger was taking him on about the tree nut allergies and the Nutgate argument between Shanann and Cindy Watts, he's going to go back to trying to question her about the 111-minute phone conversation. What I'm thinking is he's realizing that's probably not a good idea to try to launch right back into, because she's already on alert that he's trying to probe around about it and she is being defensive and evasive. So he just asks her about the nature of their relationship, of her relationship with Chris Watts while they were dating for the apparent 6 weeks that they were together. Nichol Kessinger talks about their affection for one another and saying, I love you. And there's that weird story about how he said, I love you to her while he was in North Carolina. And she said, well, hear it from her yourself.
I was like, don't say that to me. Like, please go try to fit. And I mean, and that might even be in the text too, where it's like, don't say those words to me and then go wife and lay in bed with another woman. Like, just don't do that.
Wow. As a side note, I wonder if her dad is impressed at all at what comes out of Nichol Kessinger's mouth. I mean, the nerve for her to say that. Don't say you love me and then go lay in bed with another woman. Dude, that woman is his wife, bitch. Get out the way, bitch. It's his wife. I just can't even believe those words came out of her mouth. During this interview, he just sits there. What is going through his head, or is he just used to this crap? Okay, as we start to move towards talking about the moment, the event, the thing that made Nichol Kessinger snap, that pushed her over the edge and caused her to deliver the ultimatum to Chris Watts, it's me or your family. I just want to point out a couple of things about that little excerpt that we just heard about Nichol Kessinger saying, oh, don't say I love you, or don't go lay in bed with another woman. So gross, right? First of all, I think we see time and time again the complete lack of compassion that Kessinger has for Shanann Watts. I mean, for God's sake, she doesn't even care that the woman was just murdered. She certainly doesn't care about the relationship dynamics that were going on between Chris and Shanann, who had been together for years and years and years and years while they were in North Carolina. All she really wants is to be with Chris Watts obsessively, and God knows why. But I mean, that's where this woman is at. Also, this is just one example of the many examples where you see a clear display of contempt and disgust for Shanann Watts. And these are the ugliest human emotions that we feel towards another person. And when people are feeling contempt, disdain, or disgust for someone, there is really almost a necessary hatred for that person. And also those feelings in and of themselves are so uncomfortable because they are so ugly and intense to hold inside that people will usually do just about anything to eventually escape that feeling, including irrational things. So when Chris Watts says, I love you to Kessinger when he's in North Carolina, she tells him what she thinks about that. So listen carefully to this. I always notice this, and I think that this is so important.
Don't say those words to me and then go try to make peace with your wife.
Did you catch it? She says, don't say those words to me and go try to make peace with your wife. She almost says life, but she then corrects herself and says wife. Well, why is this significant? Because I think it's not just Chris Watts' wife that Nichol Kessinger has a problem with and really would like out of the picture so she can have that hunk of hot loving all to herself. I believe she has a problem with his entire life that doesn't revolve around her. So that would be, of course, his children and Shanann at this point. And I'm sure if their relationship did continue, they are on a trajectory for her to have a problem with everything in his life other than her. But that's a whole different video. Nichol Kessinger is not okay with any aspect of Chris Watts' life that is not Nichol Kessinger. I mean, do you guys agree? Leave a comment down below. So eventually Kevin Kobach tries to again redirect her to the topic at hand, finding out information about the murders of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, and says, well, during the course of your relationship, the kids and the wife were gone most of the time. You got to spend a lot of time together. And listen to how she answers.
You guys are talking multiple times a day, at least. You're seeing each other on a regular basis.
Yep.
So it's a very, and his wife is not around, nor are his children. So there's a lot of time for you guys to build your relationship in this first four weeks or so. Is that fair?
Yeah, and even when she was back, I mean, it was still like we were still spending time together. He was still spending time with his children, and I had my own life.
Kessinger, law enforcement may not be onto you, but we are over here at Watts the Obsession. While she was back, we were still spending time together. Remember, we determined that during the course of their supposed 6-week relationship, Shanann was only home for literally 2 days of that. 2 days, August 8th and August 9th.
although what she is saying right here is a complete lie, a nonsensical and provable lie, there is the slightest bit of truth in what she's saying, because yes, while Shanann was home in Colorado, she did spend time with Chris Watts on one day, and that was Wednesday, August 8th. In Nichol Kessinger's mind and in reality, August 8th was an absolutely critical day to the eventual outcome of this horrible tragedy. And as crazy as it feels, we've got to hand it to her. She is right about that. August 8th was clearly a very important day related to the outcome of this crime. If you saw the Ultimatum Part 1, you know that is absolute fact. Also important to the ultimate outcome of this horrible tragedy are all the other days that we have mentioned in this video in Ultimatum 1, and that is that Friday, August 10th, when Shanann leaves to go to Arizona for the weekend, and Chris and Nichol Kessinger both take off of work, and Chris and Troy McCoy meet to exchange fire stick, although I think that doesn't have anything to do with this crime. You're going to let me know what you think about that. Also, a critical day related to the outcome of this crime is Saturday, August 11th, the day of the Lazy Dog Day, and of course, Sunday, August 12th, the day of the 111-minute phone conversation. And in all of those days that I just mentioned, there is so much that happened that is critical to this tragedy occurring on August 13th, 2018 that still remains unsaid. What we have learned from examining the truth of this case over the past several years is that critical moments on those last critical days oftentimes also remain undocumented in the case discovery. I'll tell you one thing, things start to look very interesting when you closely examine what exists, what has been hidden, and what has been altered, what has been destroyed, what exists in discovery. Combined with what we learned about Kessinger's actions and behaviors in the days following the tragedy, and what she was trying to hide while she was being interviewed by law enforcement, when we compare what is known to be true and the stories that she clearly made up when she was being interviewed, shows us that she is likely somehow involved in this horrible, horrible tragedy. And what does not appear in discovery may indicate her guilt even more so than what is in that discovery document within the 1,960 pages. So here's what's real funny about the discovery. There are a lot of important events missing from the date August 12th, 2018. That is the day before Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and unborn baby Nico were murdered in the wee early morning hours of Monday, August 13th. It is a critical day, and there are so many critical details that are missing, from Shanann Watts' deleted post to Nichol Kessinger's conversations with other people besides Chris Watts, and the 111-minute phone conversation between Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger. Even though the very first items in the official discovery timeline is about Nichol Kessinger. It says on September 7th, 2017, Nichol Kessinger Google searched the name Shanann Watts. Although Nichol Kessinger's name is littered throughout the discovery timeline, starting with September 1st, 2017, and she appears in it all the way through, her name literally appears scores of times in that discovery timeline until, remarkably, Saturday, August 11th, 2018. The last mention of Nichol Kessinger until her mentioning goes dark the following day, that Sunday, August 12th, the day before the murders, is a search that she made after she and Chris went out on a date to the Lazy Dog restaurant, one location, and then another. That timeline entry states at 22:04 hours, so that's 10:04 p.m., having concluded her evening tryst with Watts, Kessinger searched the internet on topics like Chris Watts, Shanann Watts, Ronnie Watts, and 2825 Saratoga Trail. And then, all of a sudden, on Sunday, August 12th,
Nichol Kessinger disappears from the Discovery timeline, not to be mentioned, not even once. Conspicuously missing is the 111-minute phone conversation between Watts and Kessinger that Kevin Kobach asked her about over the course of his 4 interviews with her. Asked about that conversation a total of 9 times.
All right, so although neither Nichol Kessinger or Chris Watts will tell authorities or anybody what the 111-minute phone call was about, there are a few things we do know about this phone call, so let's talk about those. So this phone call started at 9:28 p.m. on Sunday, August 12th,
and the call ended at 11:19 p.m., again, Sunday, August 12th, which is just about exactly 2.5 hours before Shanann Watts is seen on her ring cam security camera footage and the Vivid alerts when she's coming home, and she's seen walking from Nicole Atkinson's car up to her house and through the front door. Again, this call ends just about exactly 2.5 hours before that moment when Shanann Watts enters her house for the final time.
We know from the Discovery that several different things were happening around the time of and during that 111-minute phone conversation between Nichol Kessinger and Chris Watts.
At the time of the 111-minute phone call, Shanann was in Arizona. She was at the airport awaiting her flight back home to Denver, Colorado. She was supposed to arrive home around 11 p.m. However, flights were delayed due to storms in Arizona. At 9:29, just 1 minute after the 111-minute phone call started, isn't that kind of strange? The Discovery says Shanann made an unanswered call to Watts. And then 13 minutes later at 9:44, Shanann told Watts that she tried calling him to give him an update. She's letting him know at that time the flight crew is not even there yet, so she's going to definitely be significantly late. At 11:21 p.m., 2 minutes after Chris gets off the phone with Kessinger, Watts finally replied saying, "Holy crap, sorry, I passed out on the couch. That's going to be late." We know that Shanann landed in the Denver airport a little before 1 a.m., and at 1:48 a.m., just about exactly 2.5 hours after the 111-minute phone call ended, the Discovery says Watts' phone logged the vivid alert of Shanann's entry into their home. We know that anywhere from a moment after Shanann walked through the front door of 2825 Saratoga Trail for the very last time to just under 4 hours after she walked through that front door, her life tragically was ended. We know this because Chris Watts' work truck leaves for Survey 319 at 5:46 a.m. the early morning of Monday, August 13th, 2018, a day that will live in infamy. What you will not find in the Discovery on August 13th or the day before, August 12th, in the timeline is any mentioning of Nichol Kessinger whatsoever. There's no indication of what Nichol Kessinger is doing the day before the murders, the eve of the murders, or the day of the murders. None at all. Do you remember these posts? Shanann Watts' final Facebook posts that were deleted, that were scrubbed from Shanann's Facebook account and seemingly the internet shortly after this tragedy happened. Ready to get home to Chris and the girls, she wrote around 3 p.m. on August 12th, the day before the murders, while she was in Arizona on her Thrive trip. And then there was one more post. It was Shanann Watts' final post to Facebook, the final post of her life, that she posted to Facebook just hours before she was murdered at the hands of her very own husband. Shanann Watts was traveling to Denver International Airport from Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, August 12th, 11:09 p.m. in Phoenix, Arizona, ready to be home with Chris and the girls. Well, wouldn't you know, this very last post of Shanann's life was posted just 10 minutes before the 111-minute phone conversation between Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger ended. Now, I want you to listen very carefully to an excerpt of Chris Watts speaking in his interview from prison, and also compare that to an excerpt of Nichol Kessinger's interview with law enforcement. Remember that time she was talking about she was going over to his house on July 4th, and they were, you know, of course, talking about macros or dialing it in or working on the FitnessPal app, and she just went over there and she was just sitting on his carpet and
sat on the floor, and it was on the 4th of July. It was the morning of the 4th, and I was helping him to set up my FitnessPal app and like track his food, his calories and stuff, because he does pretty good with the working out and stuff. And he asked me, he's like, "Can you help me just like get this dialed in?" It's like, "Yeah, I can do that." So that he invited me up to the house, and I was already kind of hesitant to do it because I was like, there are other people that live here, and I just felt like it was an invasion of space.
Okay, now listen very carefully to Chris Watts' version of this story, and listen to what he has to say beyond just the facts of his story. Listen to what he's telling us it was she wanted, that he wanted, what she didn't want, how he was afraid things could turn out, and in particular, what I'm most interested in here that I think you should focus on are the questions that Graham Coder asks.
That wasn't the case. I was just letting it, you know, exponentially get worse. Right. If I told him, like, "Hey, you know," he would have been like, "Whoa, man, like, all right, take a step back and look." Yeah. Right. And like, don't like fall into that trap. Being you're going to be alone for 5 weeks. Right. And there's times I wish, you know, like maybe Shanann didn't have to go away for 5 weeks. Maybe we all just went for 1 week. Yeah. Nothing has ever happened. Yeah. It's only, I mean, 5 weeks alone, that's the only reason really that was even almost even allowed to happen.
There are quite a few people who would tell us and who do tell us, you need to look into Nikki more, Nikki Kessinger, all the way from the extreme end of things being Nikki's the one who ordered the hit.
She was there, hiding in the basement.
She was there. You know, so the extreme is she's the one who told Chris to do it. She's the real problem. All the way, that's the extreme side, and then all the way to, well, there were these texts where she was infatuated, she was in love, she was saying how good Chris was in the sack, and maybe we should look at her more. You know, what would you say to those people?
Like, no, she had her moments where I had to talk her like off a ledge kind of deal.
What does that mean?
It's like, I guess after the fact, there was like videos of her that she was like recording herself because she was like bipolar or something. I never knew that. But it's like, and she would get worked up about nothing. She would just like, she came to my house once because I think it was like July 4th. I didn't have to work that day. So I didn't like get up at like, 4 o'clock and go home. And Shanann called me like, and I didn't hear it because I was sleeping. I was just like, and she was pissed. Shanann was pissed. And like I called her outside, like, "Where are you at? Like, what? Like, I was like, I didn't have to work today." It's like, called me at like 5:30. It's like, kids want to talk to you at 7:30. I'm like I was sleeping. She's like, she just like, screw you, like, like I don't know where you're at. And I went back inside. Something like, I gotta go. And she was just like, "Okay, then you come back?" And like, probably not.
So wait a minute, you kind of lost me there. Were you at Nikki's place when Shanann called you?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you were sleeping in her bed.
Yeah, because I wasn't going to work that day because I didn't have to that day. First holiday I ever had off, and Shanann was pissed, and kind of pissed Nikki off too that I left. But I think that's when I'd called Nikki later, and she was like, she kind of realized that she'd always be like the second. She said second fiddle. Sure. And because that's how I probably would come like that day. Just, I don't want to be anywhere else when Shanann calls. She was already pissed. So it was stuff like that where she would she would go. She said she would go on like websites and look at like, will a relationship work with somebody? Like, will a mistress work? Will a mistress turn into a relationship?
That's what Nikki was looking at?
Yeah.
She would tell you that, or you heard that? Okay.
Yeah, she said that she would go on websites and look at stuff like that. I was like, why do you even look at stuff like that? She's like, I just want to see what other people have experienced.
But like, so that confuses me though, because I thought earlier you were saying she thought you were heading toward a divorce. So why was she looking at herself as
This was later on.
Oh,
like, you know, in August, like the first week of August, when I told her, like, you know, I had that talk with her about separation. That's when like she would start looking at like apartments and stuff. But like during our July relationship type thing there.
Oh, I see.
That's when she was looking up like, you know, will it actually work? She told her friend Brittany about it, I guess, and Brittany told her not to do it, but she said she'd already made a decision.
Okay. And so, are those people absolutely wrong about Nikki? She wasn't asking you to get rid of your family?
No.
Are you sure? Okay. And no part of any of this was because she put it in your head or asked you to, or
you never, I mean, this whole relationship contributed to it.
Sure.
But she didn't want me to.
I mean, was it ever like, I wish you didn't have kids. I want to have, you know, kids of my own with you. Like,
she never knew if she wanted to have kids, but she said that, you know, at one point she said, I'd like to give you a son.
So some main points I gather from that excerpt are Nichol Kessinger's complete intolerance of Shanann Watts, period, and definitely Shanann Watts being in Chris's life, and really the whole family being part of Chris's life, but particularly Shanann. Also, Nichol Kessinger explicitly tells Chris she wants to give him a first son. We know that she knew that Shanann was pregnant with Chris's child from the very beginning. And there's a 50-50% chance that child was going to be a boy. So what about that? And the information that we've recently learned is that it can be confirmed and relied upon to know that Nichol Kessinger, not only did she know that Shanann was pregnant with Chris's child, she was not okay with it. Also, Nichol Kessinger, she's afraid she's going to be second fiddle. She doesn't want to be second fiddle. Well, you know, honey, you're having an affair with a married man. That's what you are, and that's what you always will be. Also, we get a general idea of Nichol Kessinger's great instability in life, and this is something that most people would know if you've been following the case just from what she says in her behavior. But this is a conclusion that Chris Watts, I guess, came to and can explain it from a firsthand perspective. And I think it's very interesting that this story, he starts it out by saying sometimes she needed to be talked down from a ledge. Well, as it goes, apparently, Shanann Watts' final Facebook post, those 3 posts that were posted on Sunday, June 12th, are what pushed Nichol Kessinger off that ledge, the point of no return. And that's when she delivered Chris Watts an ultimatum. It's me or your family.
There are quite a few people who would tell us and who do tell us you need to look into Nikki more, Nikki Kessinger, all the way from the extreme end of things being Nikki's the one who ordered the hit.
she was there. I'm in the basement.
She was there.
Yeah.
You know, so the extreme is she's the one who told Chris to do it. She's the real problem. All the way, that's the extreme side, and then all the way to, well, there were these texts where she was infatuated, she was in love, she was saying how good Chris was in the sack, and maybe we should look at her more. You know, what would you say to those people? But like, so that confuses me though, because I thought earlier you were saying she thought you were heading toward a divorce. And so, are those people absolutely wrong about Nikki? She wasn't asking you to get rid of your family?